Hello, everybody. Hopefully, this is finding you all right today. Wanted to spend a few minutes just kind of walking through some expectations for exam three, which is coming up here pretty quick. The format is going to be similar to what we had for exams one and two. So, it'll be 35 multiple choice true false questions, three short answer questions that I'm asking you to give me six sentences or more on. And that's it. So exact same format as before. Um, and we'll kind of walk quickly through some of the major topics and issues that we covered in this unit. So again, this is just kind of a bit of a refresher. It's not meant to be comprehensive, but hopefully it helps to kind of point you on the right way, or at least raise a few things that you might need to brush up on. So first off, the first topic we had was on public opinion. So public opinion is kind of just that. It's the opinion of the public. And in this chapter, we also looked at ideology. So we talked about the distinctions between beliefs or values and attitudes or opinions. So beliefs are more this bedrock part of who you are and the things you believe, whereas your attitudes or opinions towards some particular issue or person, those are going to be more fungible. They're going to change a little bit more over time. We also talked about some of the major ideologies that are present in the United States today. So that's going to be the conservative, the liberal, are the major strands, and then also the minor strands are the libertarian and the socialist. So have an idea of what those are. And we also spent a little bit of time looking at the more extreme versions, so socialist and oh, sorry, I mentioned that the reactionary and the radical. So again, just have a working understanding of those last two, but be sure to understand the difference between conservatives and liberals. If you need to brush up on that, again, go to that public opinion lesson if you would. Have an idea of where your own opinions come from. So what are some of the things that might influence you? So how does socialization come into play? Let's see what else on this. Oh, and then the last thing we talked about there was opinion polling. So have an idea of what exactly that is. I mentioned that there's that limited use of being able to sort of take the temperature of a room or a group of people, but again, it's just that momentary instance, and almost immediately after a poll is concluded, the results are potentially going to be invalidated, right? Because stuff changes all the time, and our opinions of events around us, again, they're going to change all the time. Moving into the media, we talked about the media as this tool, as this way to connect voters with the people in power. So the voters and the politicians or the government, whoever it might be. So the media helps to kind of be that middle ground between us, the voters, and the people in government, whether it's people we're directly voting for, so politicians, or even folks at the bureaucracy are paying attention to what we want. And so the media helps to filter both ways, right? So the media is great at taking our ideas and kind of translating them, collecting them, agglomerating them, and passing them along to politicians, and same thing vice versa. So I have an idea of how they operate, some of the ways they operate it, uh, the role of political socialization, excuse me, the role of media in political socialization. I'm not going to ask you to give me numbers on for example, how conservative is Fox News or how liberal is MSNBC, right? I'm not going to ask you to kind of break those things down, but do have an idea of the distinctions, again, going back to the ideology of between the two major perspectives, conservative and ideology, have an idea of how the people rely on media, how political figures rely on media, and with that latter one, think the fully mediated, partly mediated, and then the unmediated content as well, and how those um, different approaches can yield different understandings of the news and how it's presented. Um, have an idea of we talked about media spin, media bias, and then also that issue of fake news that comes in every so often. So hopefully you remember those things as well. Moving over to interest groups, we talked about several different kinds of interest groups. So have an idea of what those different types of interest groups are. Sorry, we've got the economic interest groups, social interest groups, public interest groups, and then also the power groups. And remember, we also kind of brushed up on the political action committees, or the PACs, just to kind of touch on those things again. So interest groups are great for bringing people together, right? This is a very collectivist approach as opposed to an atomistic or individualistic approach. So we're bringing people together, helping to combine ideas, money, time, power, votes, all this stuff, to accomplish some goal, whatever those things might be. We discussed the issue of free riders, those folks who are getting benefits without putting in the time or money or effort or anything like that. So have an idea of how those impact the function and purpose of interest groups. And then finally, here, have an eye out on the tools of the interest group. That'll be the lobbying, electioneering, litigation, and then public appeal. So have an idea of first of all, what those things are, and then also how they function, how interest groups rely on them. Next up, we got into the Electoral College. So this is one that very, very frequently comes up in discussions, in classes, and in the media as well. So hopefully you paid particular attention to that lesson. Have an idea of what the Electoral College is, so where it's grounded, what its constitutional function is, how it operates. Remember, we have a very unique president. The president is the only office in the entire United States whose job is to represent the entire United States. And so the Electoral College helps to bring both the people and the states from all across the nation, right? Kind of blends them together somehow. And is able to take and draw upon the sovereignty of the states, sovereignty of the people, and then combine them into that one elected office of the presidency. So we've got a very unique election, very unique step in the process of the election of a president, and it's going to become very, very relevant here in a few months. So one more quick little plug: if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote. Do it. Pause me. Jump over to Google, type in register to vote, do it. Super easy. Please, 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 if you're eligible, or if you will be by November, do it. Do it now. All right, so know how again, I think I mentioned earlier, know how the Electoral College functions, the purpose, the pros and cons of it. So how does it perhaps limit certain types of voices? How does it help to broaden and expand upon other types of voices, right? So have an idea of the arguments in favor and against the Electoral College itself. Why the framers thought it was necessary to have the Electoral College as well. Remember, we talked about some of those concerns as well. And next up, we have our two lessons on policy. So first off, domestic policy, and the next was foreign policy. Remember, policies are just any rules, any laws, any principles, any sort of thing that you want to promote, anything that you want to do or enforce or kind of punish, right? It certainly goes both ways. Domestic policy are things that happen here in the United States. Foreign policy is dealing with other countries. We talked about the different types or techniques of policy control. So we talked about this is on the domestic side. So we talked about promotional policy, regulatory policy, redistributive policy. And sort of related to this was the article I asked y'all to read for the discussion board, post number 3. So kind of keep those authors' arguments in mind as you walk through the domestic policy items. Subsidies are kind of an important term, so we spent some time getting into those, so be sure to remember what they are. The distinctions between monetary and fiscal policy, that's one that students in the past have kind of gotten confused. So remember that monetary policy, right, monetary, money. So monetary policy is policy that's directed to regulating the economy by changing how much cash or credit is out there, right? So actually affecting the amount of money that's out there, that's available to you and me, however limited it might be available to me, at least. Hopefully it's a bit more loose for y'all. Fiscal policy, on the other hand, is policy that looks to regulate the economy as a whole. So either by taxing or spending. So making You or I pay more in taxes or pay less in taxes, and then we can spend our money accordingly. And then we closed out this lesson with a focus on the welfare system and that the idea of this redistributive program. So have an idea of the distinctions between contributory and non-contributory programs, and then some arguments in favor of and against a larger or smaller welfare system accordingly. Finally, we'll get into foreign policy. And again, foreign policy are those ideas, the things, the guidelines, whatever we want to achieve, but tied to other countries. Spend a lot of time looking at the distinctions between isolationism and engagement, focusing very, very quickly on how America has fluctuated between these two things. When it comes to foreign policy, the president is given a much broader set of tools to act than really on domestic things. So have an idea of the president's role in foreign policy. One of the, I guess, key turning points in American, actually, there's a couple we'll mention here. The key turning points in American foreign policy would be the two world wars. And at the end of World War II, we noted how a bipolar world sort of emerged. So have an idea of what that meant, the implications for the Cold War. And then at the end of the Cold War, well, now all of a sudden America is the only superpower out there. So now that has pretty massive implications for American foreign policy going forward, right? There's a lot more emphasis on America kind of getting out there, helping out the world. But then over time, we start to kind of shrink back from that. And right at the turn of the millennium, we start to sort of retreat from that. And America wants to kind of take a step back from our very, very prominent role in the world. And then, of course, soon after that, we had September 11th take place, and that greatly shifted how policies, both domestic and foreign, were to be shaped. Right? Right, September 11th was one of the most major turning points in American history. Right, it had a massive and will have a very long lasting impact, not just here in the United States, but a lot of the rest of the world as well is having impacts, or rather, it felt the impacts of that, and have had to adapt a whole lot of things to kind of address for this new thing that's out there. Um, Following September 11th, America became much more engaged in the world. We had been sort of kind of putting our toe in the water towards the isolationist side of things, but following that, we kind of stepped out once more and sort of worked to sort of be a leader in the world. So have an idea of how our role shifted after that, again, becoming more engaged. Have an idea of the distinctions between hard power and soft power, and also how the uh, foreign policy these days is much more difficult, in part because we are a much more globalized world. Everything is more interconnected, so ripples in one area of the world can have very long-lasting effects all across the rest of the world, and we're really seeing that today, in particular with the global issues that are going on, particularly tied to the pandemic brought on by COVID. So with that, I'll close out this guide. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I am happy to respond by email. Be sure to have the exam completed prior to Monday at 5 o'clock. That's when it is going to shut down. So the exam itself will be posted first thing Saturday morning. So you'll have 3 full days to kind of take care of this. And again, just like I've done before, I'll open up a discussion board for y'all to kind of post questions or issues that you might have. So feel free to take a look at that. But otherwise, good luck and take care. Have a good day.